All right, everybody. Hey, guess what? It is Disclaimers by Ed Johnston. Now, last night we had a special episode, but can't always have the special episodes happening. So, we're going to do the normal disclaimer by Ed, disclaimers by Ed, and he is currently muted, so if he decides to try to talk, it ain't going to happen. So today is July 28th, 2018. It is a Saturday. And, well, I guess I can unmute Ed and let him talk. Ed?
Well, thank you that I can at least talk. Of course, I always talk. But anyhow, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. And we're looking at different education. Like I said, we had a talk show last night. I'll get to that here in a second. And it's one of those things that makes you wonder what's really going on in our society, as some would call it. I don't go by society because I don't believe in religion or the democracy system. We're supposed to be Americans. We're not supposed to be foreigners in our own country. And that is the one thing that people got to realize. And the one thing was interesting last evening was dealing with the conversation that we had was very interesting because we were talking to some gentlemen that were from Canada. And they were doing accepted for value, and they were doing a lot of the process, what I've been listening to off and on for, investigating for the last 10 years. And it's one of those things that, all right, you can see what they're doing, but the point being was, are they going to end up in the same trouble as everybody else has been in trouble? See, that's the one thing that people have to realize. When you're doing this paperwork, you've got to be careful because they will come after you in a storm because they want the income. They don't care about what you've got. They don't care about what you're doing. You got to remember these men and women worry about the income because they are still going by the de facto system of a foreign government that is allowing people to rape, rob, and pillage, and including your own public servants, and they're getting away with that. And this is the frustration that we are getting away with, that they're getting away with, and we're getting away with because we're allowing them to get away with it. And this is the one thing that people have got to realize, that when it comes down to this stuff, you've got to be very, very careful when you're doing paperwork. You've got to be very, very careful when you're putting this stuff out because it's your butt on the line, literally. And that means legally or lawfully. And that means that if you don't do it correctly, you could end up in jail. And that's why I haven't produced a lot of stuff on accepted for value. I've talked to many people who have sell these programs, and then you start doing an investigation on these programs, and you find out people end up in jail, and then nobody wants to talk about what, why, and how. And this is the frustration that these people are giving all of us. It was a good conversation that these men and women, these two guys, were doing their paperwork and educating people along what they were doing with their paperwork. I'm not against that, but the point being is we've seen other people done it. Now they're doing it in Canada. We'll see what happens. And it's like the same thing in the United States. Everybody has to file in Washington, D.C., and that's what these gentlemen in Canada were saying. They have to file in Washington, D.C., because, that's one thing. Washington, D.C. is property of the Vatican, if you guys are not familiar, of the democracy of the British government. And that is the one thing that people have got to comprehend. If you want to be in democracy, all right, don't partake or ask all of us to be participants in your democracy. We don't want to participate in democracy. We want the Constitution. We want the stuff to be implied and done correctly. And once it's applied and done correctly, and then that way we can sit there and let people know that things were done correctly. But I mean, we did listen to a lot of structure of the way they went through presenting their evidence. We've got we've got the link up for them. Hopefully, if we haven't, we'll get that link up. But we want people to compromise in their mind that this is foreign government, that this is a corporation of Canada that's doing this, members of the Corporation of Canada. Because I haven't seen that these guys either, I didn't clarify if they filed their rights correctly to go back to their constitution, that before Canada went to the democracy system. And that's the one thing that people have to realize. Democracy is not your friend. Democracy is not your alibi, your bailout, your whatever. The democracy puts you in a situation so that way you have liability of the elected and public employees union members. It's like if you're a registered voter, you're agreeing to pay their debt. And that is the one thing that people don't comprehend. And then they go, well, I pay my taxes. Well, okay, don't tell me about it. I don't want to pay your taxes. Because that was the one thing that these gentlemen were talking about, you know, making sure that people were registered. And that's the one thing that you've got to realize. If you register in any part with the government, and remember, the government technically is the Treaty of 1213 and the Magna Carta, and that is the British government and religion dictating to you. Your religion is dictating to you that if you have rights or not. And you have to realize that this is religion that is doing this to the people. This is not the corporations. This is the corporation of religion, I mean. And to look at the facts here, this is a stunning part that we have to realize and accept these realities of what's going on. Literally what's going on in the circumstances. Because we got President Trump that's advocating to get out of the United Nations. Then you've got other people going, oh, well, we need to be in the United Nations. Well, if anybody doesn't comprehend, the United Nations was founded by Nazi Germany and the British government of the Vatican. Because you've got to realize that every time that you look at the Pope, look at his emblems on his robe. They're the same thing as the Nazi emblems. How come people don't catch things and put one and one together to make two? So these gentlemen had a lot of good ideas, a lot of good suggestions on ways of doing it, and a couple things that they brought up that I heard. I know that others didn't file it in that fashion. But see, I don't know if the Canadian structure is going to be different than the United States. And that's the one thing that we got to consider. And so we're definitely going to follow up on these guys to see, you know, what they've accomplished here in the next month or so, like they brought up. The one thing I noticed that I heard that they didn't go after when they were reporting that when they filed in Washington, D.C., they didn't get a response. Well, they didn't go after for a response the way I heard it. You know, they're still waiting for a response. How come they're not sitting there responding for that response to come out? That's what I don't comprehend. How come they're not going after Washington, D.C., the Secretary of the State there in Washington, D.C., and asking where their paperwork is, asking what's been served, asking what's been done? See, that's what stuns me, is that these guys are not following through. And so this is the one thing that we all need to pay attention to protect ourselves. That's the one thing that people need to really do, because you have to protect yourself and your family. It's your responsibility to protect your family. It is not your elected and public servants' responsibility to protect your family. And as soon as you comprehend that reality, and yes, it is a reality, that it's your job to protect your bloodline. And see, that's the one thing when they were bringing up their filings last night. You know, I mean, I've talked to many people. We've got a lot of YouTube videos up there that people walk through, or, send me $500. We'll send you this paperwork that will set you free. And it's like, no, I've heard that paperwork stuff that'll set you free before. And like I said, I got to personally follow up on some of my own filings, which I'm working on. But also too, I've been basically down for severe medical issues for a while, and then it got to the point where it got severe, so I couldn't do anything about it. That's just the way life works. And so we can't get upset with life. We have to deal with life. And that's where these guys were coming across, and that's where I wanted to have more clarification of what they're doing. And that is the one thing that when you do an instrument, I always recommend an autograph, not a signature, because a signature you give a right away, and that's the one thing. By a signature, you're losing rights. An autograph is worth value. That is the one thing that people have to realize, that an autograph is worth value. Famous movie star, rock and roll stars, they all have value. And that's where you guys got to realize that when you're filing your paperwork, you are making yourself a value for your assets. You're an asset yourself, so you're improving your asset value. And that's the one thing that you want to improve for yourself and basically for your bloodline. And that's the one thing that people don't comprehend what their bloodline really means. We've got a lot of people that are slowly getting it. I mean, they are slowly getting it, but it does take a while for them to get to it. And so that's the one thing when it comes down to these things. How are you going to solve the issue? How are we going to work together to make sure that other people know how to solve the issue? Because the whole point about us doing this and filing our paperwork, and that's the one thing, bringing that paperwork out, filing, making sure that when we've got court cases that have won, we put them up. We've got them already up. We got other court cases up on the new.org and trackers, that when people have got filings and they're winning court cases. And that's the one thing. I always find it interesting that people want to go to court and fight the court cases instead of, like a lot of people, just go send it in and they just want their case dismissed. And they say, when your case is dismissed, you didn't win. Yes, you did. That's what stuns me about people. I don't get where they get this, where you didn't win your court case because of some technicality that, they think that when a court case was dismissed, that it's not a win. A court case is won when it's dismissed. And you have that record of letter on file. See, that file, and you can always get that certification too. I always recommend or suggest that if people do that after 90 days, they didn't get a response, go get that court case notarized. Now you have evidence, and get it certified too. And now you have evidence of your rights to travel or whatever the circumstances that it was dismissed. But you want it certified, so now you've got evidence that you were innocent and you were not violating a municipality administrative rule. And that's the one thing that, I watched a video earlier where this police department is putting out this tape telling people how to deal with traffic tickets. Just sign them and go on your way, fight it in court. And it's like, we want to get to the point where we want to have these things justified, dismissed, and let go on the street. We shouldn't have to be wasting our time going to court on municipality misdemeanors. And you have to realize that a misdemeanor is not a crime. A crime is an injured man or woman. That's the bottom line of it. Injured man or woman, or child, or property damage. Otherwise, there is no crime. So it stuns me how people talk about criminal activities when somebody ran a stop sign, and nobody is professionally prepared to know what they're talking about. Because when somebody runs a stop sign, did they hurt anybody? Oh, in other words, you're just going after for financial gain for your corporation, and that's the truth of the matter. And that's the one thing that you've got to realize, that when these men and women go after for their own personal gain, that's like the ALCU. You know, oh, we're going to protect all these immigrants. Well, all right, so the ALCU is part of the, what is that? The Bar Association that was founded August 21st, 1871. How come people don't get that one? That's the one thing I don't comprehend that. You know, when the bar does something, and that's like your bar, that when you go in and out of a canal, or you go in and out of an ocean port, that's what a bar is. You're coming in from Congress. You're coming in for commercial purposes. And that's the one thing that is sad, because, you know, I want to get an affidavit. And, that's the other thing, too. When you always get something certified, try to get your apostille on it. And if you don't know it, look it up. Know what an apostille is. You want to make sure that you know these words. You want to make sure you know them when you talk to your notary of republic. And I do believe we have the Notary Republic laws up on new.org and trackers, and you have to read those. And I'm saying you have to read the notary certification structure of a notary, so that way when a notary tries to bullshit you, you know how to talk to them politely, not rudely. And I've witnessed that. I've had notaries that try to bullshit me on things that, well, we can't notarize that. That's a government paper. And I've had them say that to me, and I said, well, who's the government, me or them? And the notary would say, well, we can't answer that. And it's like, okay, well, here's a code that says if you don't answer it, I'll file on that, and this is what's going to happen to you. And I've been through those little arguments or tasks or disagreements with a couple of notaries in the past, and of course, I got my stuff notarized, but the bottom line was the frustration, because they don't like to do it. I always thought so, too, if you're near the Capitol, get it notarized by the state and get it certified by the Secretary of State. Because once you have that certified, how are they going to go against their own words? So that's the one thing about learning certification, and that's one thing that these guys are bringing up. You know, they're getting certified, they're getting some stuff apostille, and, you know, I realize they're going through this new process, because they're actually doing a new process to them. But a lot of us on this education show, you know, we watched a lot of people that have done this stuff and ended up in jail over the last 10, 20 years. You know, Winston Stroud is another one. You know, I haven't followed back up to see if he went to jail yet, but I know that he's been keeping himself out of jail after he was convicted, you know, of IRS fraud and doing the same thing that some of these men and women, or these guys are actually doing the same thing. Winston Stroud used to do education structures all around Portland, Oregon, and was getting a lot of people into it, and several dozen people ended up in jail over his process. So until we know the truth, and that's why we're going to follow up with these guys, and we'll follow up with others, until somebody's got it really down. But I'm not going to sit there and put out a program or back somebody up in that manner until I see it proven. There's too much hearsay on the street. And when we start going by hearsay, we forgot the responsibility and respect for ourselves first. Because we're not protecting ourselves first.
Hearsay bullshit. Hearsay bullshit.
Yeah, and we'll be playing that one too a lot. But that's the one thing that people's got to realize, that, you know, we don't want to get into hearsay bullshit. We actually want the facts. You know, it's like when I sit there and read you codes and administration rules, what they have to go by. And I suggest that you file that with your letters. You know, and put, you know, reference to, or, is this a reference to the copyright? And that's what I'm going to start doing on my paperwork, is a reference to the copyright. Because, if the state, every state copyrights their administrative rules, city, county, and state. So when they copyright them in a copyright law, if you use somebody's copyright, you can go to jail. So that's why, the only ones that technically use copyrights in the Democracy Corporation of Universal UCC codes. And you got to realize under democracy that, your religion runs under it, your House of Senate's running under it. Basically what turned out democracy has taken over this country in the last 20 years. And it buys off people very easily. Buys them off very easily, and that's the one thing that you got to realize, that most people sell their souls. I mean, you hear Roseanne Barr and Madonna and all these famous stars talk about how they sold their soul. What is the one that, the one that's coming out and regretting that she sold her soul to the music industry. Oh, I can't think of her name right off the top of my head. It'll come to me here in a minute. But there's a few of them that are coming out now and speaking out how they sold their soul. And it's like the child pornography and all of that that's in Hollywood. And all these actors and actresses are coming out now, well, if I known this, I wouldn't have done that and stuff. Well, what the hell are you pitching about? You got $15, $30, $400 million in the bank for which you sold your soul for on that sofa. That's what you wanted, money. So you sold your soul. So, you sold your butt, So why are we supposed to really feel sorry for some of these people that actually knew what they were doing? But democracy has come out, especially like interesting witch is Maxine Waters coming out and doing all these attacks. And, she's another one that, done that. She made all these deals growing up in California. And that's why California has fallen down. Beside immigration, illegal immigration, they got all these people supporting all this illegal stuff. And remember, legal is the British government, even though we have a contract with them of 1871 that is doing our elected and public employees services. And we put up the administrative rules and laws on that because that way you can actually see that's what the structure was. They're supposed to, instead of us keep fighting the British until we were all gone, and that's what they tried to do to the natives. And that was the saddest part. Everybody keeps going back to, well, the colors, they were slaves. We all been slaves. Irish, Scottish, Indians. The thing is, everybody's been a slave at one point, and some of us are still slaves today. And so when these people are out there doing heartstring pulling, and the average man and woman is not intelligent enough to be educated themselves, because everybody's plugged into an iPhone or a deal. I mean, you see it when you walk down the street today. Everybody's plugged into a cell phone now. People ain't spending time with their children like they did because they just buy them a cell phone and let them go off on their own deal. And so the parents, they don't have to educate the kids, and they think that the kids are going to school and get educated. The kids are getting more programmed today than they ever have been to comply, and that was the one thing that was shocking to me about these guys. Instead of keeping people out of the system, they were suggesting, you still file with the IRS, you still pay your taxes, you still do this. And they were also, too, discussing how they plan on writing off, I've even talked to people in the United States that said, well, we're going to get this thing going, so we're going to give the school district, $2 million on this thing so they can get the school supplies. Well, I've been hearing that stuff for 10 years. And so when I see it, I'll believe it. And that's what I'm talking about these gentlemen last night in our conversation. I didn't want to get in for tit for tat on some of them, but I wanted to listen to what they were bringing out to us. And so my thoughts on that is that, their process, You know, they're filing. They're doing some of the stuff. They're doing a certified. They're doing apostille. They haven't got the response back from Washington, D.C. on it. My other response to that one is, bluntly, how come they haven't sent another original copy, do another original? That's the one thing when you do these things. You always keep 5 or 6 reserve, and you always keep 5 or 6 reserved originals. So that way if you have to send another original, you know, you're sending original. You're not sending a copy of the original. The one thing that did suggest to me that I thought was interesting, and I've had that happen to me, where the one gentleman was bringing up that when he went to turn in his original paperwork, one of the agencies says, no, we're going to give you back the originals. We'll copy and keep the copies. And so you want that done too. You could actually get that done. I've had that done medically. It's like, you know, July 8th, I went into intensive care, and they kept on trying to come into me, intensive care. We need to sign this instrument. We need to sign this instrument. And if you decide to sue us, we want you to sign this instrument. I love that one. They had an instrument. If I decided wanted to sue them, I had 30 days to respond to their structure if I wanted to sue them. Well, I'm in intensive care, and you know, when you're sitting there in a severe situation like that, and they come in and want you to sign these paperwork, or they want you to put yourself in that position, always tell them, I can't sign under duress. I can't sign under duress. That's all I kept on telling these people. They kept on trying to bring papers. I can't sign under duress. And they go, okay, we understand. And they said, now you're starting to stress me out. We're leaving. You know, it's learning the words. And that's the one thing that, you know, people think that, you know, you can sit there and tell people off. You could use profanity, you know, and it's like, no, you use their words, their administrative rules. You use their structure. Some of these people might know it. Some of them don't know it. And I've had some of them don't know it, and they run like hell because they realize if they do what I suggested and try to force me to do something, they're liable. And so that's the one point I want to stress to people. I'm waiting to see these guys once they're successful. But I'm not going to pump their work out and put somebody in a position that if somebody's going to follow them, do all this stuff, walk their line, that all of a sudden you see that they ended up being arrested or something happens in that fashion. And then you got other people that have done that and end up in that same position. I do support and agree filing on your children, filing on yourself to own yourself and that stuff, filing on, like, you know, the city and county for identity theft. If you get a traffic ticket, you're filing for identity theft on it. You know, even property taxes is a good one. I've been dealing with that one. File identity theft on property taxes because an ORS in Oregon State says that you can only pay in electronic transfers, and it doesn't say the people pay. It says the banks pay in electronic transfers. And so that was the one point that the gentlemen brought up, dealing with electronic transfers. Dealing with the straw man birth certificate. And when you're doing that, you have to be very careful on what you're putting together in your paperwork. See, that's the one thing. Some of the paperwork I didn't read, but some of the stuff they were talking about, I had different thoughts of different wording that I would have done, what they were talking about, what they did in the wording. Some of the positions that they stood on, I would have done things a little different, and so would have several others of us that we know what's going on with that. But the one thing is, make sure that when you do file your paperwork and claim yourself, you always file it in your museum, your state, county, and local museums. Museums can only carry actual facts. So you want to file in your museums. You want to make sure it's posted on the county bulletin board, the city bulletin board. And so once it's posted, you know, they have to take it down after 21 days, sometimes 30 days, depends on their administrative rules. And then you want to go back and you want to make sure it's filed and ask for a certified copy of the file from the city or county or state. that's the one thing they'll try to tell you. We don't have it. Well, then you have to file another paperwork that they destroyed evidence. So if they destroyed evidence, that's a felony. That's a federal crime. And that's even by state and federal as a federal crime. That's the one thing that is learning how to program your mind to speak out the correct wording. We don't speak terminologies today that are correct. We speak the terminologies that we have been wrongfully educated on, like driving, not traveling, like my vehicle is compared to my covered wagon or horseless carriage. One time I had a cop pull me over, and I told him I'm in my covered wagon. And he sort of snickers, and I'm going, well, what do you mean? I said, I have 243 horses underneath this hood in front of me. And isn't that where the horses go, and I'm back here in the wagon? He's like, I can't believe you're telling me this. And I said, well, under ORS 446.033, recreational vehicles, as you guys had in administrative rules, we're not required to have licenses. So I have to call it as a covered wagon, and I was getting ready to start in, and the guy just looked at me and goes, you just have a good day, and walked away. Then you have cops that are going to go, I'm going to impound your vehicle. Okay, well, if they impound your vehicle, this is the one thing that we were working on. We got to finish up as a template on that one, because that's called grand theft auto. So you can file on that on a tow truck driver, on the police department. You can file that on the corporation that is storing your car, or technically your covered wagon. That's the one thing that I always like to use the old words, because you use the old words, or if you use words even from their own book, the Black Law Dictionary or Bouvier. But when you use those words out of the Black Law and Bouvier, write reference from Black Law book. That's the one thing that it helps when you put the reference to where you're getting the information to make it easier for the reader to comprehend. Because the one thing that's sad, most readers sometimes don't use their brain. They just go by what's in front of what they read, and that's what they calculate. Then you got people that, like myself, the way I used to write, I used to, assume they knew this, so I'm going to assume this. Well, we know what assume means, so I quit assuming, so I have to spell it out. I want to make sure it's spelled out. And so that is the one point that we want to get to, the point that we're able to put this stuff up, get everybody educated, and walk through the process. It's like if you're dealing with vaccinations. If you didn't hear back from the corporation attorneys, then you file back against them. Then you file on their bar license under 1938 foreign registration. Then you file a bar complaint on them for conspiring with the enemy. Yes, you can do that. You'll have these other people that tell you, don't do that, you're just going to cause a problem. Well, you're not causing a problem for you, you're causing a problem for them. And that's one thing that people don't want you to realize, that you are causing the other party the problem. And that's what you want to do. I mean, it's like I said last week, I had one of my public employees come up to me when I was walking down the street, wants me to sign this new ballot measure. And I said, I can't sign ballot measures. I'm not part of your system. And she goes, well, yeah, but I just thought you might be interested in signing it. Well, see, that was a way. If I would have signed that, that would have put me back in a new contract under voter registration, making me liable for their debts. And these men and women know this stuff. They actually go to class and be trained for it. Yeah, so I know that for a fact, because I've been elected a public official, public servant, as well as a public employee I have been. So I do know how these things work. And that's the one thing that people need to comprehend. That when you step out of these things and you don't get what's really going on, you're the one who gets the problems. You're the one who compromises. And so we don't want to get you in that position. We want to make sure that you have the proper education of how to speak to your public employees. Because speaking to your public employees makes a big difference. And it does help when you learn how to speak to your public servants. Because it really does help when you know how to talk to them. It really does help when you go through these processes. And you've got to know how to respond to these men and women. Because remember, these men and women don't work for you, even though technically they're supposed to. But that's up to you to determine that and to have them prove it to you. And you always want to put an affidavit in for your rights, no matter what you think that it's not going to do any good. Too many people think that it's not going to do any good. That is the saddest part with society today. And so if you don't participate in their system and they're comprehending that, then we're getting rights. That's the other point that we're working on. Now I'm getting my bearings back to me after my little situation. So I'm getting ready to start getting the other filings out, especially with the right to drive and travel. And I'll be getting that out. I'll be putting an affidavit. So eventually I got to work to get Salem because I want to get Dennis Richardson to endorse these things and to have them filed with apostille. And that's the Secretary of State of Oregon. And Dennis Richardson came out. Apparently he has a brain tumor now. Says it's, he's in the process of still investigating how severe it is. And with his little video he came out, Dennis Richardson is a former lawyer, if people don't know that. When he was a former state representative. And I dealt with Richardson for many years. He was an attorney, and I've done this with many representatives and senators and stuff, and I tell them, you better get that bar license out of that hand if you're going to run for this office, because then it's going to put you in this category, and make sure you're registered with the 1938 Foreign Administration Registration Act. And I've had these people look at me at times, go, what the hell is a Foreign Registration Act? And I'll tell them, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, they're registered and they resign their bar license. And that means they have to send when they resign their bar license, they technically have to resign it from Washington, D.C., from the Vatican. And that's the one thing that we're learning, the proper procedures to go through the paperwork or form filling. And when you always do one of their forms, do your own form. Sometimes they'll say, well, we're not going to accept it without our form. Well, then you put on their form reference to your affidavit. So you filled out their form the way they wanted their form, but you didn't put the affidavit into the form. You put, the affidavit form, accompanying with this or something like that. Because you always want to put an affidavit in that's notarized. You want something that backs you up. And the other thing that I brought up, too, to these guys, which doesn't surprise me, and I started doing that myself. Every time I'll send a certified registered mail out, I send myself a copy, too. Registered, certified, so that way I'm signing it. It goes into an evidence bag. And because I have evidence bags, so I put it in an evidence bag, seal it, in case I need it. But they got theirs, and I got mine, so when mine goes, if we end up going to court over it, mine is in an evidence bag, sealed. And anybody knows police evidence bags, once the seal's broken, it's done. So it's, that's what I use, police evidence bags. Because you're dealing with evidence, dealing with a criminal case. And that's what police evidence bags are, for criminal cases. And that's the one thing that people got to realize. I mean, I've talked to several people going, it's a crime to drive without a license. It's a crime to speed. It's not a crime. It's an infraction. And they can't go after you for a crime on that unless there's an injured party or property damage. Been there, done it, know the story. Been with a lot of people in their cases on that. Got a lot of people off of their cases on that, different things like that. But, you know, the other point is that I realize that there are a lot of people that are terrified to stand up on their own. They were never brought up to be, I would say, let's say, survivalist. They weren't brought up to survive. So they were just brought up to follow and do what they're told and, you know, be the sheep that goes off the cliff. And so we don't want that anymore. And so that's the whole point of getting back to our Republican form of government, the way the Constitution states in an Article 3 court. And that was the other point, bringing that up, because I don't know the judicial system, what they call in Canada. But I definitely would challenge the jurisdiction, as we have the rights in this state. We do have it posted up on new.org and trackers, and I posted that out on all my Facebook sites. You know, United States for America, elected and public servants oversights. You know, the new Oregon trackers. And then the Civil War, 1866, Bloodline Americans, and then we have the Recall Cape Brown. And that is the one thing that, when we put these things up, people, you've got to use them. And if you don't use them, quit whining. I get people all the time now call me up and, you know, they want to whine about this, or, you know, well, this ain't going to work if I do that. And they always want to tell me what's going to happen. And that's the one thing that, you know, some of us people out here who have done this for years, when people tell you what's going to happen, they don't even have a clue of what's going to happen. They're assuming what somebody told them. And it's like, you know, I don't assume, because I'm dealing with facts that I have personally dealt with or personally been involved with, personally done. You know, I mean, that's the one thing that always frustrated me, you know, with a couple of the children cases I worked on, you know, and women didn't want to get it. They have to do this and they have to do that. And it's like, wait a minute, you're the mommy. You have to do this. You have to do that. It's your responsibility. And then they would come back to these public employees. They're supposed to do this. And it's like, well, how are they supposed to do it unless you know the administrative rules and if you know what they're supposed to do? You're not suggesting to them their employment of how to do it. You're assuming they know. And that's the worst word out there, is assume, and assuming that people know what you're assuming. And we don't want that. You know, that's the one thing you don't want. And so it's like, I've got another one I put up with a structure. Everybody keeps going, oh, you need to pay the IRS taxes. IRS is not part of the United States. IRS is a foreign government, 100% completely. They are not part of Americans or America. They are part of the British religious organizations, because your religions run your court systems. Oh, yeah, wake up, people. Religion says that you're not supposed to do this or that, so that's what your courts dictate to you today, right now. You have religion courts running to you and telling you how to live, how to raise your children, you know, how to behave in your community. You know, be the citizen that doesn't argue. And remember, after the 13th Amendment and the 14th Amendment, 14th Amendment in the Dred Scott case, there's a difference of a large C citizen, a small C citizen. And everybody keeps going, and I've talked to them about, oh, well, they keep talking about citizens and we're all still slaves. And I says, well, the only reason why you're a slave because you talk like a slave. You're not filing out your system. You're not getting your certifications done. You're not filing them. I mean, that's the one thing that, you know, I mean, most of the time in my community or my area, that if I get public servants that, you know, cops that travel around me, a lot of them don't even look at me. A few nod at me. A few will wave at me. I've had a couple months ago. I had one trying to get me in a conversation, and you know, hey, Ed, how you doing? I'm like, sorry, I'm not interested in contracting today. Okay, Ed, you have a good day. You know, because their conversation is a contract. They're not friends. Every time they speak, they're looking at a way to bring in income so that way they get pay raises. Sad but true. And we do have a few good elected and honorable elected and public servants out there. But right now, when we don't have enough of them working together with one another, we're screwing ourselves. Because we don't have enough working together. We don't have enough of you men and women standing together. That is the other sad part. I'm going to grab my machine here. Not everybody's standing together. We've been so far divided by that TV set that I'm just amazed that, how parents today just buy their kids a remote control device, plug them in, and then the parents don't even have a conversation, or at the dinner table, everybody's on an iPhone or something at the dinner table. Nobody talks anymore. That's the saddest part. What family? Whose family? Why is there a family? That's the one thing that people need to think about today, what's really going on. Because we have done all this stuff, not only to ourselves, but the foreigners have done it to us so severely. Remember, your foreign public servants, your elected and public employees, are foreign agents. And that's been going back since the 1933 Bankruptcy Act. Remember, they put it in the 1933 Bankruptcy Act, and a lot of this other stuff didn't come forward until later on in life. Later on in life, that's when we started getting hit with all these things. And so, that's the saddest part on that one. Because later on in life, we're all paying for all this crazy stuff. We're paying for past generations for their mistakes, not our problems. Like all these people say, these colored people will say, well, you need to pay us for being slaves. I didn't make you a slave. Why would I pay you? See, that's the one thing that people don't comprehend that. They're going, everybody needs to pay. That's what stuns me with all these people. Everybody's going, we need to pay this, we need to pay that. For what? And technically, we're not supposed to be paying. We're supposed to be writing this stuff off. So if we're not able to write this stuff off and they're not doing their system correctly, how are we supposed to do our system correctly? And so that is the one thing that you have to realize on these circumstances when you're filing your paperwork. Look at your paperwork. Realize what you're filing. Realize that you're the liability if something happens on that paperwork. When that paperwork ever goes to court or gets brought up, you have to know what you wrote in that paperwork. You have to be able to talk the words that you're bringing in. And I've dealt with a lot of people that have, quoted different things or used other people's information but didn't read it. They just copied, pasted, and let it go. You got to read this stuff. You got to read what you're putting out there. I always like to do everything line numbered and page number. And if you go back in real factual legal history, you're not supposed to use computer paperwork. You're supposed to use pens or quill, technically, quill and virgin paper. And that's the only thing that's technically allowed in a court or technically allowed in the Vatican. And remember, the Vatican is the court that you're running and living by. So that's the one thing that people don't comprehend, that the Vatican is the courts. And your court system is run by religion of your community or whatever else. Okay, cute. And so that's the one thing that people don't get, to do that stuff. And that's the one thing that these gentlemen were talking about last night. And I was like, are you going to be doing this type of stuff? Are you going to file your paperwork? Some people say, no, I'm not going to file my paperwork. I'm not going to cause problems. So, but anyhow, if you go on the Facebook and you look at Alan, this is one of the gentlemen that was on the guest last night was Alan Nelson. And he's claiming his arms and his family
Alan,
bloodline.
Alan Nelson was not on the show last night.
Oh, that was the night before. Thank you for the correction. So, but I just brought his up. What was the other guy's name? Do you remember off the top of your head?
Yeah, not top of my head. I have it written down. Christopher.
Okay, yeah, 'cause the other point is
Christopher Lee, Kelly Royce, Rich Manders. Those were the three in there.
No, I'm talking about the guys who were filing their papers. That was the first one, and there was another guy in Colorado or somewhere in the United States that was following the same thing they were doing. So that's what I want to do. It's like, I mean, I don't have a problem with people filing their paperwork, but when you're filing it and going after your strawman accounts and dealing with the bank, you got to read the Banking Act too. You got to definitely read the Banking Act. You got to read what the banks can and cannot do. You can't assume that these other people know this stuff, because some of these men and women know this stuff, but they can't tell you, because if they do that, they don't have an income. You know, their Ferrari is more important than your children. Their Ferrari is more important than your family, your house. I mean, you know, people are so self-centered today, so about me, 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 me. You hear it with their children today all the time. I mean, even going into, you know, I've been around different places where I've went to Christmas parties or birthday parties, and all you do is hear the kids going, "What did you get me? What did you get me?" "Oh, well, that present ain't worth as much as the other one that the other family member gives." So they get more love because they gave more. So they're valuing their lives on materialistic points of facts of their belief that they're being taught. And so that's the saddest part, that these children don't even know their own bloodline. I mean, I talk to people all the time. Do you know if how far your bloodline goes back in this country? No. How come you don't talk to your parents about where you came from? No. Well, we came from God. Okay, who's God? What God? Why is there a God? Huh? Oh, well, you said you came from God, but it takes man and woman to birth a child. Oh, excuse me, to born a child. And so, you know, when they're doing test tubes and all this other stuff and taking away and getting people to separate from reality to this new fiction fantasy world, especially with these transgenders and these, I still can't, I'm just amazed that people will take their kids to libraries on gay celebration days. I'm just so amazed that people do that to their children. I mean, over the last 25 years, I've had people that were participants in that stuff. Then their children turned gay, and they're like, you know, they're upset. They don't like it. They don't believe in what they're doing. And they said, "What are you bitching about? You're the one who did it to them." "No, I didn't. I had to bring them out to give them, you know, the diversity of life." I said, "You didn't give them diversity of life. You programmed the kid to think what you wanted the kid to think. So now you're whining because the kid did what you programmed the kid to do. You brought him out to these events. The kid realized hey, I can do anything I want. And if I say mommy and daddy don't like it, I call the cops." I mean, and the children are being raised this way today. A lot of them are. And then you wonder why the problems are happening in your home when your kid comes home from school and stuff. And it's depending on who's around them or going to school, who's being raised.
Point of fact, Ed.
Go ahead.
The way that the kids and children are being brought up nowadays, I would not really consider being raised. Being raised implies focused concern for their well-being as they become adults. Just being brought up, you just let them run around. Being raised would be, okay, give them the values, give them the knowledge. So they're not being raised. They're being brought up.
Yeah, well, I was glad I had free-range parents.
Yeah, and look how you turned out. Jeez.
I know, not bad.
Oh, did you see the Facebook? I mean, California
Yeah, I
Cowboy.
saw that one. Give me a break. Yeah, I saw what you put up. Cute. But, I mean, this is the one fact that we're dealing with life, and when it comes down to this structure, that it's our structure, it's our foundation, and it's what we're giving to children. And that's why we're out there on the street educating them. At least when I walk around, I ask the kids their bloodline. I ask them, do they know this? I got a couple kids in my neighborhood that, I looked at the book and I'm looking and trying to do this, but they're out playing more than they are educating. I mean, then the parents will sit there and go, well, my kid did this and that. And I said, how come you're not even sitting down and educating the kid with them doing that? Well, I don't have time. Well, yeah, what do you don't have time? Because you're watching TV? Your TV programs are more important than spending time with your own child? And a lot of people are doing that today, like I said, plugged into an iPhone or their cell phone. I mean, I watched that and a few other people's relationship when the woman got a cell phone, and the next thing you know, she's living on the cell phone. And then she's wondering why she's having problems in her family because she's not attending her family anymore, because women mostly run the house. Women mostly control the house and the being of the house. They control what goes on in the house. Of course, men, we think we know, but no, women always have the control when it comes down to it. But the men, we are the king of our castle. And women who properly know how to take care of men, they control the men. It's that simple. But, life is simple when it comes down to it, as long as that you're working with one another instead of going against one another. And that is what we've got going on today. Everybody wants to sit there and speak and go against one another instead of participating with one another. So, and that's the one thing I do have up on the Facebook sites and on our website. Please look at the first filing I did asking them on the public employees, their job description. We want to know their finances and everything because we have a right by law. So like I said, I'm adding 2 pages. I've been saying that for the last week, but I just haven't had anyhow, it just hasn't happened yet. I'm getting ready to focus on it because I got to sit down and start going over my medical records too, because I'm still dealing with what transpired on that, because what happened to me in July 8th should never happened to me. Seeing that I was fighting a lung infection for the year 14 months prior, and it was allowed to go to that extent. That's what concerns me. It's just one of those things that, when you realize these things, what, why, and how. So anyhow, the other point is that when you want to do your paperwork like that with these gentlemen last night in a conversation, we're going, be careful. So all I can suggest to you is be careful on this stuff. Because I'm not going against what they're saying, what they're doing. I mean, I can't go against what they're doing. And I won't go against it, to tell you the honest truth. But if they're being successful, then it's something that we need to learn from. And then the other point is how does that affect in the UC, Universal Commercial Code, from Canada to the United States? There's another deal that, eventually would have to be looked into to clarify one way or the other. So, I mean, it is a lot of research for what they've been doing, what we all have been doing. The research takes time. Especially when you're reading, a couple hundred pages. Sometimes you have to read it twice to go back to make sure you clarified some things. It's like I had a suggestion that I was supposed to read something this morning from somebody that sent it to me this morning. Well, last night and this morning, but I didn't get up until late again. And just can't sleep working on things. And I haven't read that. So I just let you know, I will get back to you on it. I will have it read, because you wanted to see if I caught a few things that were written in the one of the manuals. And so, I'll get to it, and then we'll have a conversation, and we'll probably end up having that conversation on the talk show. because these things need to be brought out to the general public. And once the general public starts seeing more and more of the truth and comprehending how to talk to their employees, and that's the one thing that people need to realize. We have employees. We don't have owners. You know? And once we start quoting the truth on it, like we are doing, they can't comprehend. They can't argue. You know? Okay, Ron, I see your message, and I'll give you a call a little later. And so anyhow, we want to get the thing out, and we'll be getting eventually. What I'll do is I'll have to put response list on the website for media personnel and contacts. Be careful when you do. I'll be putting it up, but there's some media that are 100% democracy, and if you try to tell them they're wrong or what the law is, they're going to tell you the law doesn't matter. This is our religion, and religion matters more than the law. And I've had people tell me that the religion matters more than the Constitution because God gave me my freedom. And I like to ask them, where did God give you your freedom? And doesn't God stand for government of the devil? I mean, and that was even brought up last night on a talk show. So, and on their talk show dealing with CAN website, the Citizen Action Network for CAN. So that's the one point. These things are brought up. Now, I do comprehend where people are going, we need to look at this, and this might be working. But we need to look at it, but we don't need to focus a lot of time until they've been successful. Because then when they're successful, they know how to properly talk about what they have done, how they filed, the process. So that was the one thing I was waiting to listen to, the process. And I didn't hear the process per se. I heard the same structure that everybody does. You know, and they're still in the name, still in the same structure that a lot of people have gone through. And like I said, be very careful on these websites out there, Facebook sites and stuff that are telling you we can give you your money. Like I said, you know, Winston Strout has been through this. A lot of other people have been through this. And that is one thing that you have to realize, that these other men and women have done it. Some of them are in jail. And that's why, you know, we want to see proven facts on what's working. We don't want to see these hearsay, you know, right now, to me, that's hearsay evidence. Because I know
hearsay bullshit. Hearsay bullshit.
And I've watched people do this and end up in jail. And so, you know, that's where I'm hoping that these gentlemen don't end up in jail. We'll see if the foreign system is better than our system or why. But it's interesting that these men and women, and these basic men that were on the show last night, but these participants, which I thought was very interesting, they're still doing the same process that everybody else has done. And that's what I'm saying, is that we don't want to walk you into a jail cell, because that's not what it's like, you know, when people come to your doors. And I've been so proud to watch people on the internet, when workers come to the door, police department with caseworkers, and they will tell them, hey, no, we're not letting you see our kids. No, we're going to do that. Where's your warrant? We don't need a warrant. We're the state. Yes, you need a warrant. And not only that, January 27th, 2018, the Ninth Circuit Court stated that a child cannot be taken without an actual signed warrant. And remember, warrants cannot be issued to you when you're in jail, because that's a federal crime. It says that in the law. And the warrant has to be issued the minute they arrest you. They have to present the warrant.
Ed?
Yeah, go ahead.
Question. What constitutes a valid warrant?
A valid warrant has to be signed by a grand jury of 12. Cannot be robo-signature, and I put up the laws on robo-signature. That's a crime.
So can't be signed by a judge, assistant DA, or any of the other things that they've been doing?
Correct. That's correct, because they're going by democracy of the democracy system under statute codes and administrative rules. And so they're saying that you don't have rights, that you are a corporation, religion citizen, and so they can do anything they want with you. And that's why it's so apparent to start filing your paperwork to make sure they're hanged up, notarized, publicized. So once they're published and out there, I mean, I published my structure that was filed in the Oregon State House and Senate. It was certified, authenticated, including by the newspaper. When I ran for a month, it was certified, authenticated. You know, I have those. So that way, nobody disagreed what I put in the newspapers. No senator, congressman, nobody disagreed. So, I mean, I'm getting ready to start going out and doing my rights, but I want to make sure I got a couple other things done with the counties and cities and things that I publicize first, because I want to make sure that basically I'm covering all my ducks in an order before I end up going swimming out in the lake, because I'm not willing to go get eaten by the alligator. You know, and trust me, I've been through some of the attacks with them over the last few years. And so, you know, now it's time to, after what happened to me last month, this time I just got to start opening up and fighting, because that was a close call. So I'm going to be getting more and more publicized and more stuff out there. And that is the one thing that we've got to get comprehended out there for the general public. And when you get people out there going, well, you need to be paying taxes, and you need to be getting a driver's license stuff, go to DMV in the state of Oregon. When you get a driver's license, they're requiring you to turn your birth certificate over to them, so they could kill that monetary value. They could issue another monetary number, and so the state of Oregon could sit there and take the money in for themselves, and they're doing it. John Kitzhaber, former governor of the state of Oregon, that the Democratic Party went after him, including Kate Brown, so that way she could be governor now and Secretary of State. She was part of the personal attack on John Kitzhaber. And so what disturbs me about that, what she did, that's just the way she is. Power-hungry woman. But John Kitzhaber came out and the Portland Business Journal, and questioned why Kate Brown was not writing off on the birth certificate bond. He actually said it. She could write off $1.9 billion today, wipe out, the state debt right now today. All you got to do is write off on the birth certificate. And John knows this Kitzhaber because he's a former doctor, physician. He issued birth certificates. And see, that's the one thing. These men and women know this stuff. But if they told the general public, most of the people wouldn't believe them. And then the other ones would sit there and go after them and try to attack them instead of appreciating what they did for them. And that's the sad point that we're living in our communities today, is that, people are willing to attack, judge, without knowing the truth. And that's obvious because we get 30 to 1 minute sound bites on the TV and radio on ballot measures and stuff, and people don't read the ballot measures. They just go by what they heard on the radio, and then they voted, and then they're going, I voted. And then, how did that happen? Well, you wanted it. You voted. That's why I don't participate in that stuff. And then the other point, as a registered voter, you are guaranteeing that you are liable for the Senate and House debts. It's a fact. I've had people try to argue with me, and I say, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. I mean, I've proved the administrative rules up there where it actually states it. I'm proving administrative rules that say these things. What they're complaining that they don't have to go by, or others are stating, and that is the saddest part. These men and women are not out telling the truth because they care more about their income than they do their bloodline or anything else. I mean, I've had so many parents that I've talked to that says, hey, I did my job. Their kids are 18. They're on the street. Good luck. You know, and that's the one thing. People today, they throw their kids out in the street when they're 16 and 18 years old, not even educated. And then they wonder why the kids are in problems or in trouble. And they know it, but they don't care. And so this is the one problem that we have today, what's going on. So, but like I said, when these gentlemen are out there talking, dealing with, you know, the straw man account and how to not pay the bills, and we're getting Ferraris and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, the whole thing about that was not to go give you a life of enrichment. The whole thing about the deal of the Banking Act was for us not to pay our basic water, electricity bill, housing bill, not to pay the food bill, not to pay your electricity bill because it's already prepaid. That's why you get what they call a statement. And so that one gentleman brought up the point dealing with statements, and he's right. We're supposed to tear off the bottom, endorse it, and send it back to him, and it's paid. Yeah, and that's the point of getting the communications with electricity companies and these companies to be on track with this stuff and have them working with us to get this passed. Some of them don't like it because they like the debt note that's coming in, because the debt note gives them more income. Because when you send in that bill, they already wrote off the other part on their IRS taxes. And that's the one thing that if you do pay a fine or if you do something like that, always do a 1099 form to the IRS for them. Because if they don't report their taxes, the IRS actually can shut down a government agency. And I know for past experience and research, they have actually done that. And so that is the one thing that you've got to realize, that these men and women do this stuff for their own personal gain. And I'm throwing it in your heads. I want you to comprehend it, because even though you got family members that are doing this stuff, and then you're wondering why, you know, your kid or something, you know, happened and nobody knows what happened. Well, you want to see when your kid or, you know, you go to court or something, you want to see the affidavit from the injured party. Then you put a release in for the affidavit for the district attorney and state attorney general. Then you make sure a copy of that goes to the state attorney general too, that you want to see their authority. You want to see their affidavit. You want to see their submission on the case. Because that's one way that we can start, you know, tearing down this stuff. You know, everybody keeps going, we need reform, we need reform. You know, and I keep thinking to myself, these mentally challenged people. Reform. The laws are there. Why don't you learn the laws and quit whining and quit bitching and learn the laws? Quit yelling reform, because, you know, when they reform this stuff, they're going to put more of their administrative rules in it that you ain't going to have any rights. And you got to realize that that's a fact. And as soon as people start comprehending the real truth compared to what they think the truth is, we'll definitely improve. Now, eventually I want to get into, you know, we're going to be getting into how to file different cases here pretty soon. I'm working with a couple people, working on some templates and some things that we're going to be posting up. I got another website that we're going to be putting up here pretty soon to join the group, getting more and more education out there. And that is the one thing that, to get this stuff comprehended to the general public, you know, that's the one thing that most people don't get what's going on. They don't comprehend what's happening. They don't see what the truth is, and they're not standing up for the truth. You know, we'll just pay these things off. We'll let them go off on their own deal. And it's like, no, it doesn't work this way. And so that's why when these gentlemen bring up this point last night, this is what they're doing. Well, I would like to see success out of them. But also, too, I don't want to see them in jail. But, you know, they're doing a process that a lot of us have talked about doing. And so they're encouraged. We haven't done it yet. You know, because some of us are not willing to go to jail like everybody else has done it that we've watched across the deal. I mean, I've had a lot of people that were going to instruct us how to do different things, and most of those people in jail, you know, we know about the continental marshals and continental judges, and a lot of them ended up in jail. And everybody gets upset on that. Well, they didn't, the way I had comprehended it, why the heck was the continental judges in Colorado State Court? How come they didn't file for federal court? You know, I mean, I talked to Bruce many times about different things, and Bruce was like, we're doing it our way. I'm like, okay. I could just see, and they were even explained and told by dozens and dozens of people, the way you guys are going about this stuff in your lien filings, they're not going to go anywhere. And they're going, this is the way the law reads. Well, you have to be the injured party. They didn't explain how they were injured in their affidavits. They didn't explain the circumstances that would happen. They just wrote what they wrote. So, and that's one of the reasons why Ann Von Ritz, who was my comprehension, educated them. And then when they got in trouble or started getting arrested, she put the letter out rescinding everything and her involvement with all of them, which I thought was interesting, because why are you going to rescind your involvement when you were part of the foundation? So that just shows me how these people are willing to put people in trouble and to get them into conviction rates and stuff where we don't, you know, that they're keep putting other people in trouble. And some people are still following their stuff even though they're in jail. That's the other point that makes me wonder the mentality, the intelligence of these people who are not comprehending or not doing the total research of what's going on. So anyhow, with that, we might as well open up the floor, see if anybody's got any comments, especially for last night's show, if anybody was a participant of that last night, or their thoughts. I've nailed my opinions pretty hard on that one, but and that's the one thing. Opinions are like diapers, need to be changed regularly, just like a judge will tell you. That's my opinion. If you don't like it, take me to court. Or, you know, that was my decision. Take it to the appellate court. You know, appeal my judgment.
All participants are unmuted.
So the floor is open. Anybody would like to speak?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Looking up some of the stuff earlier as you were talking about the lawyers and stuff, as we already know that you said to file on them. Found something under Title 36, Code 70503, Section C, subsection 2, says refuse to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. Is a member of the advocate principle of the organization believed in or working for the overthrow the United States government by force or violence. It's something I was thinking one of the things we could follow against an attorney for, because they're not holding their oath of office.
I agree with you, and also too to get their state oath from their state bar too.
Yeah.
So, and you had another one you put up too.
I don't remember what it was. No,
I don't remember.
Also, I was looking up some other stuff. According to what they were saying, found something that says that in order to collect those funds, as somebody was saying last night, it says that we would have to charter as a bank and have to have a license, and we would have to be requested or registered with the Secretary of the State to be considered a financial institute. If we're not, therefore, we cannot make a payment to the government system with a Federal Reserve note. It was something I was looking up. I was like going, okay, so then basically we have to have a title of banking and we have to be registered with the Secretary of State, which I kind of found kind of funny, which because I was looking up under Title 12, Section 95A and B.
Nah, I agree with you on that one, and that's one thing people don't catch on that, do they?
No.
Because that's what I was saying. Not everybody's following all the correct paperwork. So, in other words, to write it off, you have to be registered with the Secretary of State, you have to be registered with the State Financial Director, and you have to be registered with the IRS Director as well as the Comptroller.
And also be licensed.
Yes.
So, yeah, and that's why I was like, okay, so then those are a lot of steps that we would have to go through to be able to get money to pay off, to be able to pull out of our, I guess, our birth certificate.
Exactly. Yeah,
anyway,
that is the point. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that's all I yield.
Okay. No, good points, and that's the point, that bringing these things out, of doing the research of what, why, and how, because that's the one thing that a lot of people don't do the process. It's like, I don't think Winston Strout taught everybody how to file, register, and license themselves under the corporation name that they're claiming. Because, see, I mean, I don't want to do my corporation name. I want to file it as identity theft. I claimed it. I own it. So they gave it to me. So I've asked them to tell me that I don't own it. Yeah, nobody's proven or said anything to me on that. So, and I've even asked that publicly at the county or state House and Senate public hearings on Senate bills and House bills and on the state general finances. But see, those are questions too that to the House and Senate that could be brought up to the people that's in office and asking them those questions. You know, and some of these people actually do know what you're talking about. There are some that don't, but there are a lot of your public servants truly do know what you're bringing up in conversation. But they cannot do that because they're saying that they can't authorize you to have that right unless you get it certified, copied. Like the right to travel, which we're going to be working on again, and that comes, so I have a right to travel. But who gives you that right? People say God gave me that right. Who's God? What God? Where's the autograph of God that gave you that right? Say, I want to see the signature from God. Oh, I want to see the autograph of God. Who made that? Say, that's the one thing that you need, the evidence when you go to court. And there are people out there who actually got things like that certified, you know, ratified. And so the cops don't mess with them. They know them in the county. They have their license vehicle description across the state. So that way people know, you know, when the cop comes up, you know, beside them, they know who they are already. And believe me, when they run your license plates and stuff, they know what's going on. They know who you are. When they say they don't know, that's bullshit. You know, when cops come up and say, you know, your medical history and all that doesn't come up on the police scanners and stuff, it does. But lying is their game. That information does come up. Has to come up. They have to know who they're dealing with before they deal with them. And see, they're supposed to be knowing their mental stability and stuff before they deal with the general public. And that's why they put it in a file. You know, that's, you get, when you go into police departments, they can type you up, know who you are. You go into any medical office or any state office, they can type you up, know everything about you right off of that computer. Anything you got programmed in that computer. That's why you don't want your children out there being registered in the computer and stuff. You want to make sure that the people in the community know who, what, why, and how, and leave you and your kids alone. And see, that's the one thing, damn computer. That's the one thing that people are not comprehending. They're really not comprehending this stuff, how it works, how to protect the children, how to protect themselves. And so that's the one thing that, and thank you for that one, because what you brought up is a point that people need to know. Have they registered? Have they followed this step? I mean, because the way I'm looking at it, there's like 30 steps to go before you get your name off the birth certificate or you own your structure. I haven't done them all myself. I'm still slowly working on some of them. But I filed my major stuff on it. It's been filed in the Secretary of State, certified. I've got certified filings here in the county, certified. I've had stuff that I don't know if it's certified or not. I got packages from the county clerk that asked certification stuff, but I'm not opening them up because they go in an evidence bag. Because once the seal is broken, I agree to that term. And so I'm not going to open that seal because I'd much rather that seal be opened by a jury or judge when it goes. And also, too, when you go to court, remember, you want a jury trial of 12. They're going to tell you, oh, jury 6, no, that's maritime. I don't care what they tell you, or military. If you look at your military or your maritime, a jury of 6, that's what the military runs, and that's what the maritime law runs, jury of 6. But also, too, their juries are supposed to be of their subordinates. And that's the one thing that you got to realize. Of a jury, and that's the one thing we'll try to get Kelly on here, because Kelly's been in a grand jury and stuff. And want to get her on. She's got a talk show Saturday at 10 a.m. on Republican radio. And she gets into grand jury stuff. And I give the lady credit. She's got a lot of knowledge on that stuff. She won't be part of, the computer age, because she's not going to have her brain shortened out or anything else by cell phones and all that. But she's strong on that. That's her right. And that's one thing that people got to realize, that people have a right to their knowledge. People have a right to their, and I'll even say faith. Because, see, I don't choose faith as religion. My faith is the Great Spirit, Mother Earth, Creator. I know when I've been out hunting, I know what it's like to, shoot a deer. I know what it's like to shoot other, what they call game animals. To me, it's called food resources. I know what it's like to go fishing and take care and clean my food, my resources. And so when you get a public employee, and I've had game wardens, I would love it when a game warden would come up to me. You're hunting. I said, no, I'm not. I'm subsistence. Well, what do you mean by that? And it's like, please don't play stupid with me. And I've had some of these idiots try to play stupid with me, but they do that deliberately, trying to get you trapped in for you to admit some type of guilt, so they could try to write you a ticket. And remember, that's all their job is to write tickets and to bring income to justify their funding of service of their employment. And that's the one thing about our servants. I've been fishing on a jetty. I haven't been fishing on a jetty in 10 years now, but I used to fish on a jetty prior to that for 15 years, and cops would come up on the jetty and start asking people for their ID. And I'd say, hey, don't you know that you don't have to show them your ID? Do they have a warrant? And half these cops, I never saw them a day in my life, to tell you the honest truth. And I'd spark up, and all of a sudden they would speak out going, Johnston, stay out of this matter. You're not involved. How the hell do they know me? Let me tell you, they get to know you, I believe that my face has been on many dartboards in some of these offices. But they do know who you are. They do pay attention to what goes on. That's their employment service, that they have to pay attention. And so it's like I said, the main thing is learning how to talk to your public servants. When they ask you for your ID, whose ID? You're talking a state corporate ID? I don't think there's a law that says I have to have a state corporate ID. I'm personally dealing with that right now. No, I don't have ID or anything like that. Even when I went into the hospital, what was it, last year? No, this year. I got to get back to that. I went into the Oregon Pain Center because now they want you to sign a contract. So if they find anything else in your system, including marijuana, they could make sure you get no medication per your life. And this opiate bullshit that they're saying when there's opiate crisis and all this shit, that's another bullshit. If you're stupid enough to not pay attention to the medication, doctors usually will say maximum, 4 to 6 hours, 8 hours on the most, sometimes every 24 or 12 hours on opiates. You take them on the time. You don't take 2 or 3 right now and, expect that it's going to, you're not going to have an effect on it. It doesn't work that way. And I've been around people like that growing up, and we all been around people like that. It's called responsibility. Preach and talk your responsibility. And once you know your responsibility, then the kids get to know the responsibility. So it is frustrating when people are going through this degrading deals that we have. It's like today, I walked into the store to go get a gallon of milk, and I had my backpack because that's the only way I could transport right now. And, you're freaking out and yelling at me. You got to put your backpack at the door. You got to leave it at the door. And I'm looking at him going, what the hell? You already convicted me of a crime? No, that's just our policy. And I said, no, that's the corporation policy for you, not me. You're already slandering me and trying to convict me of a crime that I didn't commit, and that's what you're stating. And they're going, no, that's not what we're doing. And I'm like, that's exactly what you're doing. You're falsely accusing me of doing a crime. Telling me that I have to leave my backpack at the door because you're telling me that I've already committed a crime in your eyes. And they're going, oh, no, it's just store policy or whatever. Your store policy is telling me that I'm trying to commit a crime. And then you're going to try to tell me I did not? And you're telling me and you're falsely accusing me of slander already? And they're looking at me, I'm going, I'm just dealing with the reality of law. I'm not your slave. I don't have to go by your administrative rules. And then they're going, well, we have the right to refuse service. And I'm like, yeah, okay, then I have the right to do this, that, and the other thing. Well, just they wanted, now all of a sudden they just want me the hell out of the store. You want to slander me? You want to sit there and accuse me of theft? That's what you're accusing me of, telling me that I can't have my personal property with me. And that's one thing that people don't comprehend what personal property is. That personal property is my backpack. That cannot be searched without a warrant. And I've talked to people all the time, well, it's just easier to let the cops search my car. And I'm thinking to myself, God, you know how many people have done that and ended up in jail for them planting shit? That's one thing. They do plant stuff on people. People say it doesn't work that way. It does too work that way. I don't know what people don't comprehend about the reality of life. And it is sad. It is sad, that we're going through this. But like I said, we do have solutions. We are getting solutions to the problems. It's like we got these massive chemical spills happening and these oil spills. And I keep telling everybody, well, the government is supposed to do this, the government is supposed to do that. And I keep telling them, who's the government? You're the government. How come you're not doing it? Well, it's not my job. I'm not paid for it. You have public servants that are. How come you're not making them do their job? And then you want to whine because they're not doing their job? See, that's the one thing that just sort of stuns me is that, people don't sit there and know these people's jobs. They assume something, or they assume stuff by religion, and that's the other thing that sort of stuns me with people. They want to assume stuff by religion. So I cannot condone it. I cannot accept it because if you're going to go by religion, that tells me that you don't sit there and live in the real world. You're not paying attention to what's going on in the real world. Religion is not religion is a world that's been created. It's like there's so many religions that are new today. So many new religions just in the last 200 years. And people jump into these religions. Let's not forget that, what was that, the Buddhist one, and then we had Hare Krishna, you know, the guys at the airport with their tambourines, you know, getting money for their cause. We had the Hare Krishna here in Oregon, that craziness. So, I mean, and these people follow in religion. You know, I'm thinking about maybe I should start a religion through the Constitution. We should start a Constitution religion. And here's the religion rules. Here's the religion way to go. Yeah, it's not a bad idea when we think about it. You know, because then we can sit there and go to people here. Here's the way it is. Here's your religion belief if you want religion. You know, that way you have rights, not privileges in this religion. You know, so that's another thought. We could go in that direction. It's an interesting thought. You know, that would definitely wake up and, you know, shock the religious world. Because, like I said, I believe my religion is the Constitution. I do not believe my religion is some book that's telling me how to behave and to do what I'm told, like, what is that, Romans 13.1 says, thou shalt do what the government employees tell me what to do. And God created the government, so you shouldn't question the government. And that's what religion tells their followers. Don't question religion. The government gave you, or don't question government. The government gave you your freedom of religion. No, the government did not. We, the people, did, and the Constitution gave us that right. So that's the one thing that we've got to keep those points of fact in existence and separation from reality compared to the fiction that we've been educated on. So anyhow, anybody else like that? Anything else? No? Okay. And then I'll get back to you, Ron, on that too. I'll give you a buzz here in a bit as soon as I pull your number up. But I mean, that is the one thing, is the connections, working with that, working what's going on in your communities, your areas. So once we start doing that, we notice that people are paying attention. We are noticing that numbers are going up. And so we are paying attention to people paying attention to what we're bringing out to all of us, bringing out the knowledge to us, bringing out the other ways of handling things. You know, I mean, I talk to a lot of people that will tell me, I do all my paperwork in the name of Jesus and God and all that. Well, I mean, I've seen that happen working, and I've seen it happen where it failed. So I'm very leery of those type of things when it comes down to it. I am very leery for my safety and the safety around me of people for that. Because once you start going in that direction, you know, religion never gave you freedom. If you actually read the Bible and stuff, it never gave you freedom. That's the one thing, you know, people interpret stuff. You know, I've been to, you know, what do they call that? You know, where everybody sits down in Bible studies and everybody talks about their opinion and thoughts about stuff. Where's the facts? So anyhow, I mean, those are just things that we got to work with our children and work around with ourselves on facts. So and that's what we want from these gentlemen in Canada. Like I said, I'm very cautious about dealing with people in a foreign country, extremely cautious, because even though that Canada is a kick-away country from the British government, but it's still under the British government authority, literally. You know, and that's the one point that they were trying to suggest, that the United States was still under British rule. I put up the laws in the court cases that we are not under British rule, and including Judge Scalia even had a court case on that and said that we weren't. So, you know, and we're not part of it. We withdrawed out of that. We fought 5 wars in this country against the British. Don't forget, we fought World War I, World War II was the British, 1812. Oh, we can't forget the Civil War saying that we fought the South, over freedom. We didn't fight the South over freedom. We fought the South so we didn't have to pay taxes and we didn't have to go by their religious belief. Remember, religion was part of the Civil War battle, but that's not taught in history, and a lot of that's only in the historical records of Congress. That's why our forefathers sat there and said, you're entitled to have freedom of religion. Doesn't mean your religion is allowed to be talked on the street or out in public. You have the right to free religion. That's what I said. I should start I should start a Constitution religious church. We'll bat that one around this week. That'd be an interesting to bring up on the internet and bring that out and throw that out to really throw the turmoil into the religious organizations. Because like I said, it's amazing. Just in the last 200 years, we've had over 30 religions start up. Just in 200 years. And so that's one thing that, everybody can start a religion. Anybody can start a write-off. I mean, there was talk shows that did churches just for fun on their comedy shows. Oliver, what the hell was his name? Oliver, it'll come to me in a minute. But he has a talk show on HBO. And he's got a good thing on religion. And I don't know why I'm having a brain fart on his last name. Hang on a minute. I'll pull it up. Come on, computer. Hey, my computer. I got to take this in or find somebody who knows what the hell they're doing in a computer. Of course, that's hard to find somebody you can trust. But, what the heck's his name? Oliver, John Oliver. And you can type in John Oliver on YouTube and watch what he did on national TV. And John Oliver is from Britain. And if you look at all the TV shows today, all night talk shows are all from Britain, Canada or Britain. We're the Americans, people. So, anyhow, anything else like bringing something up? So, I guess with that, we'll just have a blissful evening. We'll call it a night. I will get some more stuff out here. I'll get some more filings. If you go to the Facebook and the website, you can see what we did file on Cape Brown, the sheriff of my county, and what's going on around. So that is the one thing that is real, not a joke. And so then we're going to be getting more filed. I want to do every one for each county and each state. And so we'll get a template out for people, and I'll get templates set up on the Facebook. So when I get finished this original one that I'm doing, because this one I'm asking if they're registered with the Foreign Registration Act, if they have a license, a few other questions that need to be asked in this. Well, it's going to be 8 pages, I think. But it's really hard-hitting. It's extremely hard-hitting. And so then you got to follow back with a letter to these people when you haven't heard from them. And that means also, too, filing with the state attorney general. Because as they're supposed to file and register, the state attorney general is supposed to have them arrested and charged with criminal felonies. Not misdemeanors, not violations, felonies. Obama started the precedent. I mean, not Obama, the devil. I'm talking Trump started the precedence on that with the Foreign Registration Act. How many of his own personal attorneys he had to fire, and several of them ended up paying fines for not registering. People need to pay attention to these structures of our administrative rules that are finally being done. The Democracy Party, for the last 20 years prior, has just let it run amok so they can sit there and rape in the money off of your birth certificate insurance funds. And we know it's an insurance fund. It even says it in the Bankruptcy Act of 1933 and Executive Order 2040. So when these people try to tell you, oh, no, well, we're going by what the administrative rule says and their statutes say. We're not going by opinions or especially attorneys' theories or lawyers or judges. So anyhow, with that, I guess we'll call it an evening. and I'll get some more stuff out here. Seeing I'm starting to get more intuitive now. I'm starting to get more strength. Because that did take me down for a bit. It took me down a few notches. So, anyhow, I would like to say, may the Great Spirit bless you. May Mother look over you and feed you. And may the Creator definitely protect us.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ed. And remember, and everybody that you should not trust, never trust your producer. Because ever since I joined up with you, Ed, I've increased my fundage 300%. So 300% times 0 is, oh yeah, 0. Never mind then.
Yeah, I know.
Well, just.
I know that. That's why. Oh, we are working on setting up a link to the website so people can donate, so we can keep the website going too. Because we are in very financial strapped situations. Not due to our own personal structure. It's due to what's happened in life. And so we're going to be setting up a link on the new.org and trackers for funding for the website. So that way people can see where the money's going for. We can see what people want their name published. We'll publish it, thanking them. But also, too, we want to make sure that the people comprehend this is not going into our pocket, like some of these other activists do that convince the general public of other things.
Now,
so, you got a point.
Here's the thing. Ed's not saying that we're going to start charging. What we're going to do is we're going to set up to where if anybody wants to give a gift to the website, they can do that. Not in coffee beans, Brister, but in the de facto debt note or whatever that is.
Preferably a federal transfer from electronic device from one to the other.
Agreed. That. Now, we are not charging. This will be a gift. Not a donation, not a subscription. It'll be a gift. So once we're able to get that set up, anybody who is wanting to help out the website can do it. The information there is free. That's the big thing right there. It is free. So if you want to help out, you can. If you don't feel like helping out, no problem. We're still going to be doing this, no matter if anybody helps us out or not. We may not have a website in the future, but hey, we'll still help out the best we can. But with that, it's July 28th, 2018. It is currently 6:47 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Ed spoke pretty much 98.2% of it. Everybody else was nice and quiet. So, Ed got 54 out of 73 you-knows today. So, yeah, I know. You could do better.
I don't want to do that much. I just get a problem with that,
Yeah, I know.
I know you know that I know you know.
All right, that is 56 now.
Oh, wait a minute.
Wait, no, it's 58.
Now, wait a minute. What are you trying to walk me into now?
All right, thank you for joining us. And tomorrow, if Ed's up to it, we'll have him doing education with Ed. If not, we'll give you an update on his life vitals and even let you know if he's in a hospital or not.
I don't plan on doing that one again. That was too much for me.
You didn't plan on the first one. You just were too stubborn to actually say, I might have a problem. I'm going to go in early.
No, I don't claim stubbornness.
Denial, first symptom.
All right, I'll accept denial, but not wait a minute. I'll take stubbornness over denial.
All right, now I'll see you tomorrow night. Have a good night, and we'll hopefully be hearing this voice tomorrow night too. Goodbye.
What do you mean? Hopefully, we'll hear my voice tomorrow night.
Unless you croak.